very much. I'd just like to make a comment, perhaps a little bit specific. It is about the concept of nation. In Latin America, there is a new phenomenon, especially in some countries, and I think in particular to Ecuador and to Bolivia. To a certain extent, the problem has been raised also in Mexico, and it is a concept of a state which is plurinational. I think we have discussed till now the situation of countries where there is one nation and one state. But today, with the new constitutions in Ecuador and in Bolivia, we have, to a certain extent, a new concept. I'm not a specialist in constitutional law. I have been able to participate to the work of the preparation of the Constitution of Ecuador, and it was a very interesting experiment in the sense that it has been recognized that a state can be constituted by different nations, a plurinational state. And this is, of course, it has a very specific historical concept. It is a context. It is a context of the indigenous people wanting to be recognized not only as individuals having rights, but as communities. Communities in the sense of people or nations, original nations, because of their suppression by the colonial power and the new situation in which they are now living, which is a kind of a reconstruction of what they have been before. A suppression of 500 years where they had to live in clandestinity from the cultural and social point of view, when they were completely oppressed, where they were reduced also to really an oppressed class, but without losing their specificity as a people. And so the new constitutions in Latin America, I know it is a very specific case, but perhaps this is something which will happen in some other parts of the world, where there are not only what we call in Latin America or in North America indigenous people, but what we call, for example, in Asia, minorities. What is the situation of such minorities or indigenous people, which in the world represent more than 200 million people? It's not nothing. And how can we recognize that phenomenon from the point of the legal point of view or the juridical point of view? And so this first experiment, I think, in Latin America has to be followed. Of course, there is a certain distance between the writing of a constitution and the reality of the political life. When we see that in countries like Ecuador or Bolivia, we see that the principles which have been accepted in the constitution are very difficult to apply in reality, and sometimes the interpretations are extremely different. But it is also the object of conflicts, because sometimes in some countries where, officially it has been recognized, it is difficult for the state, and in a period of rebuilding the state after the neoliberal period, it is difficult to accept the idea of existence of plurinational state, because to rebuild a state you have to rebuild citizens, and the way of rebuilding citizens is perhaps thought along the line of what has been the past. That means individual people which have to live together. So I just raised this question because I think it is an important one. Everywhere where you have minorities or indigenous or originous people which are coming out of a long period of oppression with a new kind of consciousness, and with a consciousness which is today interesting because it is more and more anti-capitalist, at least in Latin America or even in North America, because those people experiment that their oppression has been linked with the type of economic system which is now prevalent in the whole world. And so it is a reality, and of course we have to try to see how to answer to such a reality, also with some legal forms and new orientation.